The coming judgments on Saudi Arabia and Jordan. Our keynote scriptures are Amos chapter 1, verse 11 through 14, and Amos chapter 2, verses 1 through 3. Thus saith Yahweh, for 3 transgressions of Edom and for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because he did pursue his brother with the sword, and did cast off all pity, and his anger did tear perpetually, and he kept his wrath forever. But I will send a fire upon Tamar, which shall devour the palaces of Basra. Thus saith Yahweh, for 3 transgressions of the children of Ammon, and for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because they have ripped up the women with child of Gilead, that they might enlarge their border. But I will kindle a fire in the wall of Rabbah, and it shall devour the palaces thereof with a shouting in the day of battle, with a tempest in the day of the whirlwind. And their king shall go into captivity, he and his princes alone, saith Yahweh. Thus saith Yahweh, for 3 transgressions of Moab, and for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because he burned the bones of the king of Edom into lime. And I will send a fire upon Moab, and it shall devour the palaces of Kerioth, and Moab shall die with tumult, with shouting, and with the sound of the trumpet. And I will cut off the judge from the midst thereof, and will slay all the princes thereof with him, saith Yahweh. As we continue to review the Gaza war and its implication for Israelite captives and exile groups around the world, it is clear in the opening 2 chapters of the prophecies of the prophet Amos that there are, in the prophet's message, prophetic witness of latter-day events that parallel the prophecies of historic fulfillment that took place in his time around 750 BC. So tonight it is from this vantage point that we will review the application of Amos's prophecies of judgment on nations in the Middle East that are currently affected by the war in Gaza. Last week, we reviewed 3 national entities that were historically cited for Yahweh's judgments in Amos chapter 1, verses 3 through 10. These 3 national entities were Damascus, Syria, Gaza, and Tyre. And we applied Amos' prophecy to those nations now, with Tyre being seen in these times as Lebanon, where the enemy to the north of Israel called Hezbollah is located. Though there are some historic fulfillments of judgments on these nations in and around Amos's time, yet there are some prophetic latter-day meanings that parallel those historic fulfillments as well, some of which we see taking place now or about to take place in the Gaza war right now. So tonight, we will look at the prophecies in Amos chapter 1, verses 11 through 15, and chapter 2, verses 1 through 3. We will investigate in these judgment decrees on the ancient nations in Amos' time of Edom, Ammon, and Moab. And what are the prophetic outcomes from the Gaza war upon these ancient nations, who are now identified today in the modern states of Saudi Arabia and Jordan. And Amos chapter 1, verses 11 through 12 is the prophet's message against Edom, which in biblical times was located in what is today called southern Jordan and northern Saudi Arabia. Thus saith Yahweh, verse 11, thus saith Yahweh, for 3 transgressions of Edom and for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because he did pursue his brother with the sword, and did cast off all pity, and his anger did tear perpetually, and he kept his wrath forever. But I will send a fire upon Tamar, which shall devour the palaces of Basra. Edom was the nation of the descendants of Esau, our father Jacob's twin brother. One of the judgment indictments on Edom in Amos 1:11 is, quote, because he did pursue his brother with the sword and did cast off all pity. Notice Esau had a habit down through history of trying to violently exterminate his brother Jacob and his bloodlines. Even in the womb of Rebekah, Esau and Jacob fought, as stated in Genesis 25, verses 22 through 23. And the children struggled together within her. And she said, if it be so, why am I thus? And she went to inquire of Yahweh. And Yahweh said to her, 2 nations are in thy womb, and 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels. And the one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. And when her days be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb. And the first came out red all over like an hairy garment, and they called his name Esau. And after that, his brother came out, and his hand took hold on Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob. And Isaac was 60 years old, 60 years old, when she bare them. Now, according eventually to Genesis chapter 25 through 30 through 33, Esau's family name became Edom because he sold his birthright to Jacob for a bowl of red lentil soup. And Esau said to Jacob, feed me, I pray thee, with that red pottage, for I am faint. Therefore was his name called Edom. And Jacob said, sell me this day thy birthright. And Esau said, behold, I am at the point to die. What profit shall this birthright do to me? And Jacob said, swear to me this day. And he swore to him, and he sold his birthright unto Jacob. But when Isaac, their father, conferred the blessing on Jacob, Esau sought his father to give him a blessing also, of which Isaac pronounced upon him in Genesis chapter 27, verse 39 through 40, which resulted in Esau wanting to slay Jacob. It states, and Isaac his father answered and said unto him, behold, thy dwelling shall be as the fatness of the earth, and the dew of heaven from above. And by thy sword shalt thou live, and shalt serve thy brother. And it shall come to pass, when thou shalt have the dominion, that thou shalt break his yoke from off thy neck. And Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing wherewith his father blessed him. And Esau said in his heart. The days of mourning for my father are at hand. Then will I slay my brother Jacob. Also, King Herod the Edomite, a descendant of Esau, wanted to kill the Messiah Yeshua when he was an infant by killing all of the male children of the Bethlehem area that were 2 years and under, as recorded in Matthew chapter 2, verses 13 through 16. And when they were departed, behold, the angel of Yahweh appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, Arise, take the young child and his mother, and flee into Egypt, and be thou there until I bring thee word. For Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. And when he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night and departed unto Egypt, and was there until the death of Herod, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by Yahweh, by the prophet, saying, Out of Egypt have I called my son. Then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, was exceeding wroth, and sent forth and slew all the children that were in Bethlehem, and all the coast thereof, from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had diligently inquired of the wise men. So Edom is judged because he is the perpetual enemy of the children of Israel, of whom Amos said in chapter 1, verse 11, quote, regarding Edom, why Yah was judging him. It was because, quote, he did pursue his brother with the sword and did cast off all pity. Also, as stated in Ezekiel chapter 34, verse 5, regarding the Edomite hatred of the children of Israel, quote, because thou hast a perpetual hatred and hast shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword in the time of their calamity, in the time that their iniquity had an end. So in light of a futuristic interpretation of Amos 1:11, which states, again, thus saith Yahweh, for 3 transgressions of Edom, and for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because he did pursue his brother with the sword, and did cast off all pity, and his anger did tear perpetually, and he kept his anger forever. This means that in these latter days, in the midst of this Israelite awakening, Esau will always rise up against the Israelites to destroy us because of his hatred of the children of Israel. So right now at this time, when our birthing forth as a nation draws closer in this awakening, Esau will draw closer to destroy us. Even in the time when Isaiah 40 verses 1 through 12 says, comfort ye, my people, saith Yahweh. Speak ye comfortably to Jerusalem, and cry upon her that her warfare is accomplished, that her iniquity is pardoned, for she hath received of Yahweh's hand double for all her sins. So in the time that Yahweh decides to pardon Israel's iniquity, as stated in Isaiah 40, Ezekiel 35, verse Ezekiel 35, verse 5 says, Esau's perpetual hatred of Israel will nonetheless continue to want to destroy us. And this is why it says in verse 5 of Ezekiel 35, because thou hast had a perpetual hatred and hast shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword in the time of their calamity, in the time that their iniquity had an end, because our iniquity as a nation will be pardoned in the latter days, as foretold in Romans 11, verse 26 through 27, which states, and so all Israel will be saved, as it is written, there shall come out of Zion the deliverer, and turn away all unrighteousness from Jacob. For this is my covenant unto them, when I shall take away their sins. This means that the ultimate judgment on Esau, that is decreed in Amos 1:11, must likewise be fulfilled in the latter days. The prophet Amos gives us the boundaries of the nation of Edom today in chapter 1, verses 12, in chapter 11, in chapter 1 of Amos, when Amos speaks of Yah's judgments on Edom, he gives us the boundaries of where the nation of Edom is located today. Verse 12 says, and I will send a fire upon Teman, which shall devour the palaces of Basra. The boundaries of Edom today are Teman, which is in Saudi Arabia, and Basra, which is in southern Jordan. So it will be in this area that Yah's judgment on Esau will take place. Both the governments of Jordan and Saudi Arabia are heavily impacted by the war in Gaza because their people are demanding them to fight Israel. But both of these countries are also under the influence of America at the same time. Also, the prophet Amos calls out for judgment on the nations of Ammon and Moab in chapter 1 of Amos, verses 13 through 15, and chapter 2 of Amos, verses 1 through 3, which state, thus saith Yahweh, for 3 transgressions of the children of Ammon, and for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because they have ripped up the women with child of Gilead, that they might enlarge their border. And I will kindle a fire in the wall of Rabbah, and it shall devour the palaces thereof with shouting in the day of battle, with a tempest in the day of the whirlwind. And their king shall go into captivity, he and his princes thereof, saith Yahweh. Thus saith Yahweh, for 3 transgressions of Moab, and for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because he burned the bones of the king of Edom into lime. And I will send a fire upon Moab, and it shall devour the palaces of Kerioth, and Moab shall die with tumult, with shouting, and with sound of the trumpet. And I will cut off the judge from the midst thereof, and will slay all the princes thereof with him, saith Yahweh. Northern Jordan today is where the kingdoms of Ammon and Moab were located. In fact, the capital of Jordan is today called Ammon, Jordan, which is the royal seat of the king of Jordan. And his kingdom is called the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan, meaning the Shemite kingdom of Jordan. As recorded in Genesis chapter 19, verse 37 through 38, Moab and Ammon were the sons of Lot, who our father Abraham was the uncle to Lot, and Lot was his nephew. Lot unknowingly conceived Ammon and Moab while drunk through incest with his 2 daughters. It stated, thus both the daughters of Lot with child by their father, and the firstborn bore a son, and called his name Moab. The same is the father of the Moabites unto this day. And the younger, she also bore a son and called his name Ben-Ami. The same is the father of the children of Ammon unto this day. In biblical times, the Ammonites and Moabites were constantly at war with our ancestors, the Israelites, particularly in war around the possessions of Israel east of the Jordan River, such as where the possession of Israel called Gilead was located. And Moab and Ammon were always at war with Israelites living in those boundaries in order that they might take from our land and enlarge their borders of Ammon and Moab. As stated in verse 13 of Amos chapter 1, thus saith Yahweh, for 3 transgressions of the children of Ammon, and for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because they have ripped up the women with child of Gilead, that they might enlarge their border. So Yahweh declared by Amos in verses 14 through chapter 2, verses 3, that because of Moab's and Ammon's ruthless and violent characters, that Yahweh will judge them in the day of Yah, portents of which we see today that actually could unfold from events connected with this current war in Gaza. Because as stated in verse 14 of chapter 1 of Amos through chapter 2, verse 3, Yahweh describes the results of a war that will destroy the king and princes and rulers of Ammon and Moab, all of which comprise the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan today. So the king of Jordan today is the king of Ammon and Moab. And the king and government of the kingdom of Jordan will be destroyed according to the prophecy of Amos. And as we keep up with the news of the Gaza war, we are beginning to see the handwriting on the wall as to where things are headed. 2 days ago, America's Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, was in Amman, Jordan, to broker a peace deal regarding Gaza with Arab representatives from Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and of course, Jordan. And Blinken was an abysmal failure. But it was interesting to note that the 3 ancient kingdoms of Edom, Moab, and Ammon were present because they were represented by the nations of Saudi Arabia and Jordan, where the boundaries of all 3 of these kingdoms were located that Amos is talking about in his time. This coming Shabbat, Yah willing, we will continue to review from Amos and from Psalm 83. The confederacy of these nations of Edom, Ammon, and Moab, as well as others that comprise modern Middle Eastern nations that eventually are to rise up against you, the true Israelites, when we birth forth in our own land. Yeshua said of these foes in Matthew 24:9 through 14, and then shall many be offended and betray one another. Verse 9, then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted and shall kill you, and you shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. And then shall many be offended and betray one another, and shall hate one another. And many false prophets shall rise and deceive many. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations. Then shall the end come. Hallelujah. May Yah bless you.